Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Swift Crate Customs, and today I wanted to give you an overview of the Leonardo Design Studio Pro version of the software. The Pro version of the Leonardo Design Studio software makes its debut on July 14th, 2023. So it really just depends on when you are watching this video. Once it goes out on YouTube, it is going to be out there for a while. So you could be viewing this years down the road. I'm going to try to make this a timeless video, which means I will not be talking about specifics on things like cost. So make sure to check out the description in below this video and I will have updated information that I will update on a regular basis about the costs of the Leonardo Design Studio Pro version and more information on that. I will also have chapters down below that is going to help you if you want to jump to a specific section. So this Pro tutorial is going to be giving you an overview of the majority of the things that are available currently as this is released. However, I may miss something. I guaranteed I'm going to miss something. So it is a brief overview of some of these tools to show you how they function, but there are some that are much more involved. So make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications. I will also be having more in-depth tutorials and sharing projects using some of these tools that go into greater depth. So this is a video for an overview of everything to give you a little taste of it. So first, let's look at Leonardo Design Studio as a basic user. So on the screen here, you're going to see the basic version of Leonardo Design Studio software. The biggest factor here that I want you to pay attention to is this toolbar that is down in the bottom left corner. When I switch this over to the Pro version, that's where you're going to see some of the changes, but I'm also going to point out a few that are under the menus. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to swap over. Okay, so now in this Pro version, if you look down here in the bottom left-hand corner of Leonardo Design Studio, you're going to see that that toolbar has expanded, and we're going to go into some more details of that in just a minute. There are a couple things I want to point out. First, now available in the Pro version, if you come up here to File, you're going to see a Job Notes and Statistics. So if I click on that, I can add notes in here to my job. So let's just put this in here. Eraser and knife, that's what my file name is. I also have a job statistics. So if I click on job statistics, it's going to give me the statistics for my current job that I have selected on the screen, the current project. This is also going to change as you cut and enter settings. Now, something to note here is it's going to keep track of your settings if you are using the Leonardo Design Studio software and setting the cut settings within the software. It does not keep track of if you change that on the actual machine. So this is all within the Leonardo software itself. So if I click Job Notes and I click Update, then you're going to notice this little yellow notes symbol down here. So for someone who has font styles or whatever your notes that you want to keep track of for your current project. Maybe you have customer requests, maybe you have just notes to help yourself. That is a good thing to have down here. So once it's located in the bottom left corner, if I click on that, it's going to pop up again and I can add to it as needed. So that's one new feature. Now the other new feature I want to show you is under File and Export Artwork. I now can export as a different file type. So you have several different options here. All artwork, selected artwork, use current page size, include cut contours, what resolution you're exporting at, and here is your different file formats. So you can go through this and there's a little scroll bar. Those are your 5 file formats as I am recording this video. So you now have the ability to create in the Leonardo Design Studio software. In the Pro version, you can export your artwork in different file types. So I wanted to make sure to mention those first before we get started in the toolbar. So I'm going to click Cancel because I don't need to export this yet. And then let's take a look at this toolbar. Now there are a lot of different tools nested into each icon. Some of them I'll be able to go through and demo and show you, but others are more advanced. So watch for additional in-depth tutorials on those specific features as well. Make sure to check out those chapters in the description below if you do want to skip to a certain tool. So this is just a brief overview. Well, this is an overview. I try to keep it brief, but with all the features in here, it's going to be a little bit longer. So you have your select tool, you have a bounds select tool, so you can draw around an object and you can select it simply by doing that. So if I have the bounds selected here, I am going to left click and drag across everything, and that is now going to select any objects that I have drawn my cursor around. And you have your regular select tool, which is in the basic. Point editing is not active right now because I don't have anything that needs point edited. So the first one under the eraser tools. So you have 4 different options and I'll briefly go through those. So your eraser, if I select the eraser, you're going to show a toolbar in the top left. You have several different options. And if you look in the bottom right corner, you're going to see those mouse hints show up if you have those activated. This is a great way to learn the software or learn what different buttons or features do within it. For instance, Shift is going to resize my brush. So if I hold my Shift key down and move my mouse in and out, it's going to resize my brush. You're going to notice that change up here. Currently, I have the brush eraser, but you also have line and square. So if I were to erase here in the middle, that shows you it's a brush. It's kind of a rounded edge more. I'm going to Control Z. If I choose line, then it's going to draw more of a line across. If I choose square, it's going to draw in a square. We'll just do this here in the middle. And you have your square brush size. And you can have both square and line selected at the same time. This allows you to erase in a square brush pattern, but more the ability to move it around a little bit more instead of being in the line. So that is your basic eraser brush. Now I'm going to undo this here so we can go back. And then you have your knife tool, and your knife tool is going to be a 0 line width tool. So if I left click, you can see I have these little crosshairs that showed up. Left click, if I drag across the whole thing, you're going to see once I let go of my mouse, it is going to show that I have a line across that with that green box or the green line there. You can see that. And then I can separate those objects. Now you can choose to have your tools continue to be active if you go to File and Preferences and All Preferences under Editor Options, because with the Pro version there is now more tools available. You get the additional knife, eraser, and vector brush. So you can choose how those tools function on whether it's going to continue with that tool. And that's why you saw here I have knife tool unchecked, which means that it's going to use my knife tool and it's going to stop. It's going to then go to my select tool. If I have that checked, it would continue drawing with the knife every time I clicked. So it's a complete personal preference here. So then I'm going to show the next tool. So if I just undo this and make my square back, I'm going to come in here for the eraser, and I have this holes. So in this case, I'm going to bring my square over here. I'm going to work with this. So what I did was I drew out a square and I drew out a circle and I made that into a compound path. So what I can do with this is it says hole eraser. So I have a hole in the middle of my design. I can come in here and I can erase part of that hole. Now if I come in here and choose align, then I can, I always hit my shift key. Shift is resize. That takes me a little bit to get used to. So if I hold down my control key, again, look for those mouse hints in the bottom right corner, it will snap to horizontal vertical lines. So then I can draw across that and it's going to erase part of that hole. If I come down here to the next one, it is the slice brush. And again, just play around with these tools. The more you use them, the more you'll start to see how they function. So I get a little cursor here, and I'm going to draw across this. Now in this case, it doesn't look like anything happened on the screen, but it did. It really did. So if I zoom in here, what you're going to see is very lightly, I have lines across my design where I drew that eraser. If I come in here and I right click on my design and go to paths and I ungroup paths, now I can move these and they are separate pieces. So you're going to see that I'm able to sort of dissect an object. So let's zoom back out here. So you can see here, I had to ungroup it after I used the slice brush. And let me undo this again, and I can show you that again real quickly. So on the screen, go back to before I use the brush, select my brush, and it gives you the options up here that you can use. So I chose line, holding down my control key, and I'm going to drag across the whole object. Now again, doesn't look like anything happened, but if I come in here and zoom in here, let's see how close I can get in with the zoom. If I zoom in, you're going to see little white lines right there. So if I come back out here, I right click on it and I choose paths and ungroup, then I can separate those pieces out. So you can see that I have separate pieces. So it gives you some different options that you could work with. The next one that we'll briefly talk about is under your pen tool, you now have a vector brush. This means that you can draw and you have more control. It is a brush. You can choose your line or your square as your designation. Here you can simply just draw a line with a brush, hold your shift key down, it increases or decreases the size of your brush so you can draw and create. Some people are more creative and artistic than I am. It just takes some practice and getting used to. So I think anybody could create and design within it. Now I do have a trackball mouse, so mine, that makes it a little bit easier for me to, with the trackball, I can do that. But you can see here, and I'm just simply drew a rough flower. So I'm sure that there are people out there who can do much more artistic things with the vector brush. Next on our toolbar list is the draw shapes. We had the 4 basic shapes to begin with, and then now we have these additional shapes in here. So first I'm going to open a new design mat. I'm going to activate the additional shapes. So you have 3 different ones. We have a custom polygon, which then opens up a menu where you can adjust this as needed, which I like this little pop-up so you can see exactly what you're going to show on the screen. You can adjust the sizes in here if you want. So when you click apply, it's then going to give you your drawing tool and you can simply click on your design mat. Now that was the radius of your design. When I double clicked on it, now we have these active edit points. So here, if I come back here to this polygon, when I open it back up, it remembers the last one I drew. Here is your radius. So the distance from the center out to the edge, which you can see here. I chose 2.75 and that adjusted here. It is going to vary depending on the number of sides you have and the shape of your object, your polygon. So if I cancel that one, the next one is a rounded rectangle. This was requested as well. So you can choose your corner radius here and adjust that as needed. Choose your width and your height. Then you can draw your rounded rectangle. Or simply click on your, let's activate that again, hit apply and click, and it's going to give you that rounded rectangle, which you can then resize. Again, hints in the bottom right corner. I really like that because I learn a lot of new things. I get so used to doing things in the software, in any program, in the same manner, in the same way every time. So it's really fun to just be able to see what all can happen with the different keyboard shortcuts that you can use. So here we have a custom star. You can adjust this as needed, give you a starburst, and then when you place that on your mat. So you have some custom shapes here. Now we get into a few more of these more in-depth tools. I'm going to show you briefly on those, but it will not be an in-depth project-based tutorial. So I'm just going to open a new design mat. I'm going to come down here to my text tool, and the first one is your text mode. So if I open that, that's where you type your text, just the same as normal. We now have that no wrap option, which I presented in version 1.1.8. That is a basic feature. If I cancel that out, I'm going to demonstrate here for the text on Arc. When it opens up to a new settings window. This is pretty awesome because you have a lot of different options, and this is where I highly encourage you just to get in and just start playing with it. You enter your text up here. You can see that on the screen show up. You have a little gray arrow or a green dot here. You can adjust around your oval. You have your radius, so you can make it larger or smaller. Your degrees, which you can adjust there, as well as that green dot. And then you have your baseline position. And then for me, what I noticed was I always click the up arrow, which I thought would go up, but it's actually baseline position. You want to press the down arrow so it goes to a negative number that goes outside of your circle. So just, again, play around with things in there. You have your centered for top and bottom. You can type this and have multiple lines. So there's underneath. We'll see, let's do that again. We'll do it as a demo. And then you have your bottom adjustment down here. So I can bring this in or out. So down here, the up button takes it out away from the circle, and the down button brings it in closer. Then you also have your line spacing here, and that would be when your text wraps around. But the other factor you have in this panel here is your font style. So you have your text on the screen, you're seeing it real-time change. I can come in here and I can adjust my font style, and I can see that how it's going to look on your path or on your arc. Now, something to keep in mind here is that when you're putting text onto a path or an arc, scripty texts don't always work well. In general, doesn't matter what software program, because of the way a script text is supposed to overlap and is supposed to connect with the next letter. When you start to put that onto an arc and a path, sometimes that can be funky. So you really just want to play around with it. And in this case, it's really easy to do because you can see this on the screen. You also have your zoom functions up here in the top. And I pressed my space bar and then it defaulted to a different text. I think that's funny, but let's see if I can pick that one. Here we go. You notice that the scripty font here, it is not connected. So even if I have auto weld selected, then it's not going to look quite right. Now, character spacing is coming. It's on the list. I did put that in and reminded them on the beta group as well before I did this video. So depending on when you're watching this, it may already be in there. But I love that you have this option to show up before you actually click apply. So here, let me choose a different font. That would be great. Okay, so we'll select the Algerian font, and then I'm going to click apply. And there you see on the screen, and if I double click, it goes back into my edit mode. So I have this on my screen, double click, goes back into the edit properties for this specific one. Now, if I wanted to make my circle smaller, I can rotate it around and just get in and have some fun. Again, that's probably more time than I should have taken with that particular feature, but we'll click apply, and there we have it. Now my birthday's not for a while, so but I just typed that in there. Now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to click off of it to deselect it. I'm going to type some new text. So I'm just going to type out happy birthday. And what I want to do is I am going to use this vector draw brush that we previously went over. I'm going to drop this down a little bit, and what I want to do is I'm just going to draw a line here. So the next option that we have is called text on path. So if I click on this, and I actually didn't need to type that happy birthday, so just ignore that. I'm still getting used to some of these features too. I've been playing with this for a couple weeks now, but I've been playing with a lot of things, so I get things mixed up. So here we go. If I type in where it says type path text here, you can see that my happy birthday is going to adjust to that text or to that path. I can move that by grabbing that green dot and just move that along that dotted line. Then you also have your offset. You can adjust the offset of how far you want it. Notice when you do that your letters are going to adjust and conform to that path. Your start position, you can change that here or with that green dot. And then you also have your baseline position. So you can adjust that so it's on the top of that dotted line that you see on the screen, or even with it, which was the default. So here it was the default, follows that line a little bit more. You do have two other options of flip text, so you can go upside down or centered. And then we also have the font style here, so you can again adjust your font style. And you can play around with that. And then once it's ready, we can click apply. And so you have your font. Your text is according to a path. Now you can do this for any kind of path. So let's come in here and just choose another example. So I'm going to come in to my custom shape, draw a polygon. Let's choose that one for now. And then what I want to do is I'm going to come to my text on path, and whatever shape is selected is going to be your path. So if I were to type in happy birthday, you can see that depending on your shape, that's going to make a difference on how your letters and your font styles are going to make a big difference in how that looks. So if I choose my font here, you can see depending on where it's at on that shape, the size of my font style and my text style is going to make a difference in how that looks. So now it fits all on one side, but if I were to move it around here, you can adjust and play with that as needed. Back on the properties, you also have those features where you can, that's your start position, your offset, so you can make it bigger or smaller. Let's see about going smaller inside. That's 0. And then you also have your baseline, so you can bring it in or work out. So those are great new features under your text properties. Click apply, and it's going to place that. It is not connected to that shape, but now it follows the shape that you have it selected on. So next on our toolbar is our build contours. That is a basic feature that is in there. There are no additional icons under that. Then you get into your weld and everything that is in under this icon. So you have weld, and then we get into some punch out tools. So I'm going to open a new design mat, and I'm going to first draw out a couple shapes so that we can see this on the screen. So I have two shapes. I'll change the shade of this. And then I'm going to come in here to weld. So if you choose to weld, if I select both of these shapes, choose weld, it's going to join any overlapping shapes together. So now it's going to cut around the outer edge of that. I'm going to hit undo. If I choose punch out, it's going to remove whatever top shape is from the bottom shape. So if I hit undo again, so if I were to place this here, select both, and I'm going to punch out or remove. So if I were to add a third shape in here, let's change the color of that one. Now I have 3 different shapes on top of each other. So let's watch how this works. If I select everything and I use my remove or my punch out, it's going to remove that top shape from the bottom 2 layers. Again, your order of operations. So just play, 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 play. That's how I learn. I get a new beta version and I just start pushing buttons. With those selected, let's work with 2 shapes at a time now. I then have a stamp or keep. I have little tool hints there. So keep, if I click that, it doesn't look like anything happened, but it did. In fact, it keeps both of the shapes, but it punches out from the top shape to the bottom shape. So again, we'll undo this. You can see here I have 2 shapes, select both, and then I'm going to punch out and keep. So undo that, 2 shapes again, and I have an intersect, which means that it's going to, whoop, everything was selected, or not what I wanted was selected. Select the 2 objects, choose intersect, and it's going to keep the intersection of those 2 objects together. If I add in that third one here, select everything and intersect, then it's keeping the shapes that were intersected on that in this area. And then moving along the line, we have the slice intersect. So if I select both of my objects, choose the slice intersect, it is now going to intersect that where those 2 objects intersected. Again, use your tools, use your hints, and just click on the buttons. Now here we have make compound path, release compound path, and then we have the color layer weld and the base layer weld. So when you're working with multiple layers with different colors of, say, an SVG file, you can now weld layers together easily. I'm not going to go in depth into that right now because I have to find a file to work with. So you do have those options as well. Again, that's at the bottom here, color layer weld and base layer weld. Now the next one on the toolbar, I'm going to open a new design mat. I am going to type out some text here. Let's just use, nope. Okay. So I have some text. I will keep it the very default of the font, and our warp is next on our toolbar. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through, I have the warp mesh here, which means that when I click that, it gives me these little edit points, so I can manually adjust a warp and have that design, create a design as I would like. So you can create different styles and just move these points around to adjust that design. I'm going to undo here, go back to normal. Back in the warp, I now have flag warp, which means that it's automatically going to adjust that to a flag shape. And you can use these edit points here, blue dots, to adjust that even more how you would like it. So all kinds of fun things to play around with. I'm going to undo that, back to normal, and then I have a global warp. So it gives you another look at how you can play around with words or shapes, however you want to do this. I'm using text as an example, but you also have these edit points here that you can adjust as well. Undo that. Next one is a tube warp. So you can warp based on the tube, a tubular shape, and you can adjust that as well. So you can come in here, all kinds of fun things to play around with. And then if I double click on this, let's see, it does not give me text options, so I'm going to bring this back out. If I double click on it, now I have that warp. Once you apply that warp, you're no longer in editable text mode. So keep that in mind when you are adjusting text and different things. So I'm going to bring this back out here. If I hit undo, once I get back far enough, I can adjust that text. So let's come in here and just pick a different text style. Let's see how that looks. So that's a little bit different text style. We can play with this. So now I have, this one is your circle warp. So it's going to be shown on this circle here. Oh, and then when you click off of it, once you double click, it activates that warp again. So I can adjust my center point of my circle so I can see that a little bit better. And then you have these adjustments here. So then I can, whoa, make it very unreadable. And I can bring that in and just play with that. So then you can adjust it along the circle. Again, you can't read that with that font. So lots of edit points to play with and work with. Now let's undo all of that. Take you back. So I have, nope, not today. And then now you have a 3D warp option 2. So you can play with this and adjust. Ooh, there we go. Or let's see, if we do like far, far away. Nope, not today. So you can just kind of play around with that, see what works for you. Again, your text styles, your shapes, whatever you're trying to warp is going to make a big difference in how that looks. And then probably one of my favorite features is the cone warp. So let's undo this back to normal. I'm back to my text, and let's see if I can make it a little bit, well, let's try that. So if I come in here, the last one on the list is fit to cone, and I really think this one's cool. So when I open it up, I get a panel, and I can actually like rotate this and see my cone. So cone or conical warp is for things like cups or anything that is shaped like a cone. It is not going to work for spherical objects like an ornament. That's a sphere, not a cone. Your cone is going to work for cups, tumblers that are smaller on one end and larger on the other. If your object is dimensional or has multiple measurements on it, it's probably not going to work either because it's not a cone shape. So for instance, if your top is smaller and it's wider in the middle and then your bottom goes back to smaller, it's not going to work out quite the same. You really need the object to be smaller on one and then go in a cone shape all the way to the next one, so then it's larger at the other end. But you have a lot of different things. You can either go by diameter here or circumference when you're measuring your object. For instance, here is a coffee cup, and it's wider at the top and it's smaller at the bottom. So you're going to input those measurements according to each cup. There is no magic number for a cup because this size cup may be different than what you have in your stash. So you really do need to measure those. And even if you order the same product, it could vary slightly. It's created in different batches. So just keep that in mind when you're working with this. This cone warp is also not designed for full wraps. It is designed to take a design or text that you have on your screen and warp that to fit on the conical shape and account for that change in dimensions. I see that as one of the most asked questions about full wraps. Now, I have talked to them about a full wrap option in the future. It's a lot of mathematical calculations, but it is on their list that I suggested. So we can come in here and let's just change this. My cup is taller at the top. It's about, I wrote this down somewhere. Let's say 6. Oh, that's the bottom. Sorry. Bottom. We'll just do some very animated dimensions here. And then you have your length. So if it was 6 inches tall. And then you can choose your width of your design, so you can increase or decrease that, and you see that show up on the screen. Now, one of the, I'm most excited about this, and it may not excite you at all. So when you're working with this conical warp, cone wrap is what it's specifically called in Leonardo Design Studio software. When you go to apply that to your object, how do you know exactly where to put that on the cup? That was always something that I wondered. You were guessing at how far from the top to place that so that your warp actually was in the accurate location. So I asked them for a registration mark, and they added it overnight once I asked for it. So add a mark at the top. You do not actually see anything on this screen, but I'll show you where it happens in just a minute. So then you can adjust your width, you can adjust the auto position, or you can uncheck that and you can position this yourself. So if you want it closer to the top or you want it closer to the bottom. Auto position will then take it back to centered. You have some other additional things here too. Before I leave the screen, I do want to point out you also have 2D unwrapped. So depending on how you work as a user, some people like that 3D option and some people would rather work with this 2D option. Play around with it, see what works for you. So on this 3D projection, then you can also rotate. So cool. I just love this. Rotate it up and down, see how that's going to look for your design. Once you're done, click apply. Now I will say here, I have given them some feedback currently as it is in the software in my version. Once you click apply, you are set. You can't come back to enter in or change your dimensions. So make sure that you're right, or you have it right before you do click apply. It's always a good idea to make a copy of your design so you have the original design to go back to, or undo is your best friend. So once I click that, it's going to bring in that warp design on my design mat. And here is where you see this registration mark. So I have this little registration mark. This is going to designate where I place that at the top of my cup. So me personally, I can get this lined up exactly where it is supposed to be on my conical shaped object. Now, yes, it is going to add a little bit more of materials that you are using. You can decide if you want to use that or not. Even if you have it on your screen, you can select that and you can click delete, and you can delete that after it's already there. So you have the ability to, and it looks like I can even enlarge that as well. You have the ability to change that, change your mind on that. So I hit undo, I'll come back out here. So let's take a look again briefly at that. So fit to cone, you can adjust it as needed, adjust your top. So let's say 4, adjust your bottom, 2, adjust your length, and I'm just putting in random dimensions. Add my top mark, and then decrease my size, play around, see what works for you, and I'll have some demonstrations more on the YouTube channel coming up as I play with these features. But click apply, and it's going to warp that for your conical shape, so you can go ahead and cut this. So next up on the list, we're going to open a new design mat, and what you'll notice is once my design mat is blank, some of these buttons are grayed out because I have no objects on my screen. I need to create an object here. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to, let's do a star. So just a basic star. I have 1 star. I'm going to come here to the scale. Mine shows as a scale. So you have your rotate, you have your mirror horizontal, mirror vertical. Those are in your basic. Now you have a duplicate multiples. So you can come in here and easily duplicate. Then you have your tile array. This is going to open up a new window, which means you can duplicate and tell it how many copies and where you want those copies. So if I tell it I want 5 across and I want, let's just put 4 rows. You could adjust your spacing. This currently shows as millimeters. I will report that because for consistency, mine is set for inches. So it's odd to see that millimeters in there, but I'm not worried about it. You can adjust this and see it on the screen for how close. Oh, now that I adjusted it, it changed to inches. So if you do see that, just click on it. It's going to change that to the inches, depending on what you have set in your preferences. You can also choose auto fit, and then it's going to auto fit all of those on the page. And if I adjust that back down, so there I have that. You can include grid lines. Grid lines can be used to die cut or as weeding lines. So I can add that right here on my screen. And you can choose whether to show the preview or not to show the preview. I'd rather see the preview. You can see my mat size is 12 by 12 down here. So you have some different options, easily duplicate. Then if I click apply, it's going to duplicate those on my mat. You can see the blue lines are for my die cut. If I come over here to, it should show on my artboard right here, default cut, it's defaulted blue, so it's the cut tool. If I wanted to do a full cut and change that setting, I could simply, everything's selected so that my stars do the cut action as well. And I'm just going to move those off. Now I can click back on one star and I can actually move that outside of that weeding box that it has created. So keep that in mind, play around with it. Here's once I clicked off, I deselected it. So you can, after the fact, change what you have decided. So it's completely ungrouped there from the individual stars. Now I'll move this off my mat to show the next one. If I come down here, and you'll notice the icon that is in the toolbar is going to be the last used tool. So now I have this rotated array. So let's bring one of these back onto my design mat, and I'm going to choose this rotated array, and then it's going to ask me what I want to do. I want to rotate. How many copies do I want? So I can choose the number of copies. I can adjust the gap spacing. Again, when I clicked in there, I will report that. When I click in there, it does change to inches because that's what my preferences are set at. And then you can auto calculate a radius, or if you uncheck that, you can change the radius of that shape as well. So when you do that, your stars are a little bit more spaced. And then again, you have the show preview or not to show the preview. So you have some additional options in there as well. Click apply, and it's going to apply those stars in a tiled array around the shape. And those are some of the new features in the Leonardo Design Studio Pro version. Again, it was debuted, released July 14th, 2023. Depending on when you are actually watching this video, there may be new features that have come out. It could be years down the road. Once it's out on YouTube, the video is timeless. So if you have any questions, leave those in the comments down below. If there's something you do want to see a more in-depth tutorial on, make sure to comment with that below. If I already have the tutorial, I will link it up for you. If not, I will create one. I hope that you have enjoyed this glimpse in the overview of the Siser Leonardo Design Studio software. Thanks for joining me. Have fun. Jump in the software. Just start playing. More information in the description below on the Leonardo Pro software. Have a great day.